Hey, Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. Finally, it's been a while. So tell us who you are, what you do.
My name is Brittany Filori. I'm the CEO of 51 Blocks and a couple of other white label agencies. We serve other agencies and help get them out of the sea of fulfillment so they can just focus on sales and marketing.
Awesome. And you weren't always the CEO, you were the COO. And that's really what I think would benefit a lot of the agencies today of really kind of talking about, you know, how to find the perfect COO and what they should actually be doing. Cause I think there's a lot of people that struggle with this.
Yeah, it's interesting because, yes, I have a unique position as a CEO. I started at the very bottom and I worked my way up the ladder. And a lot of CEOs are the owners, founders. And I came to the COO role with such a unique perspective, knowing how things worked in the trenches versus coming into a business and kind of just using my operations brain to put all the pieces in place. So I can definitely give some good tips on not just finding the right COO, but also just the relationship dynamic between the CEO and the COO, because that is so misunderstood, but also like from my own experience, there are a lot of pointers as a COO that there's things that I wish I would have had in place, but now looking on the other side, I kind of understand the CEO side. So, um, hopefully lots of good information I can share being in
Wait,
both.
let's start with figuring out when is it the right time to bring on a COO versus an operations director, right? Like when do you think they're ready for that?
We I transitioned over into more of a COO role when we were large enough to need department managers. So, and this will depend, I think, on everyone's agency and where they need a CO. You could have a COO and you could have no department managers, for example. I think it comes down to, are you ready to hand over the keys to your business in a way that has to do more with like the numbers and the growth and like do you really need that second hand to help you get the agency to the next level? The operations manager side is more so just the people management, which is fine. You can have a people manager. But I think for us, it was really like, okay, we're ready to collaborate in a way we hadn't before. I'm not just responsible for making sure that people show up, do their job, and like everything's kind of functioning. I'm actually responsible for efficiency of the business. Like, are we actually growing our profit margins? Like all of these things that I think you have to get to at a certain point if you want to see your business just like soar. I always say like the COO is going to be either the best decision you make for your agency or it's going to be one of the worst, depending on who you put in the seat. Because we hold so much underneath our umbrella that it's a very tricky role to hire for, certainly. But that's when I would say you're ready. Are you looking at someone who can help you drive the business in more of a financial mindset with the operation side and making sure that it's running as efficiently, as lean as possible? Or do you just need somebody to monitor the people and make sure they're doing their jobs?
Yeah.
That's what I would say is more like an ops manager.
And I like how you gave the distinction too. If you have departments, it should be a COO. If not, it's
Right.
more of a operations director because there's a pretty big difference in salary.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And operations roles are not cheap. Part of this is that it's such a high stress role, even if you're just an operations manager. Um, this role for me, I was like the janitor. I'd say I was like a glorified janitor, right? You think of somebody who's responsible for making sure everything is neat and tidy and on track. That's your operations person. And it's a very high stress, high burnout role. You're going to pay a pretty penny for someone who comes in with that talent. If an agency is pretty small, and maybe they don't have the budget for an ops manager quite yet, I would say train your best. I was an account manager, for example, when I was working my way up. Train your best leader that you have in the business to start to morph into that role. Um, I I think it takes just attention to detail and somebody who can really see the bigger picture too to be a great ops manager. And that'll be, I think, more of the cost effective way to get someone in and get them rolling on that.
Yeah. Building within is always the best. We had one of our mastermind members the other day, we were saying they're trying to post a job on LinkedIn, and they're just getting thousands of resumes because people can just click submit and they think they're a COO, right?
Yeah.
And we told them, we were like, hey, you got to put mousetraps in there, right? Like, say, don't apply here, apply over email, send a video, put this in the subject line. And he's like, Jason, like, and he went to the rest of the community. He's like, yeah, I've got like 4 out of 700, that actually followed instruction. I was like, well, do you want your COO to follow instruction? Do you want them to pay attention to the detail?
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. One of the best interview tips I ever heard was ask somebody on an interview how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Because not only is it going to completely like throw a curveball their way, you want to have them answer step by step. And that's like how our brain should function in the operations role.
Yeah. The other question is starting off with, hey, I hate surprises. So after I hire you, what would be something that might surprise me later on?
That's good.
Kind of rather than asking for what's your worst quality.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure.
All right. So what's the dynamic between, I think a lot of people listening have understood EOS and the visionary and the operator, right? The visionary is the person that's going to just distract everybody from everything. They're coming up with all the ideas. They can't really organize them. And then the operator is really the one that kind of brings ideas to fruition. Is that true?
That's right. Yeah. The integrator and the visionary are really unique dynamic because I think the talents can cross over. So you'll have to find it if you're ready for this. You're going to have to stay in your own lane, which is like the number one, like the hardest thing CEOs are going to have to let go of is to let your integrator do their job. Yeah. So the dynamic.
Was that a problem with you guys when you started
100%.
transitioning?
Oh yeah. If anyone knows Michael and I, here's the thing. If I gave one tip when it comes to finding the right COO, I would say try not to look for yourself. Don't look for somebody who's like you. Find somebody who complements you. And that is Michael and I. We're night and day. We're completely opposite. But we complement each other. And so our dynamic of visionary and integrator was really powerful because we really let each other just kind of thrive in our own spaces, but that there were times where it was really hard for him to stay out of it, for example, or for me to not like have an opinion about something he was really feeling very passionate about. Because as an operations person, we always go to worst case scenario. Well, this could happen. Well, this could happen, right? That kills a visionary's like ambition. So you have to definitely remember your roles, try and stay in your lanes as much as possible. Certainly you can collaborate if you have a good relationship. I would consider the CEO-COO relationship to be like that work wife or those types of marriage relationships where your foundation will be trust and communication through the whole thing. And then, hopefully you build upon that. Just a great working relationship, but it's a challenging one for sure.
Yeah, I always looked at it as, we both have the same belief system or the core values, right? But we're the total opposite. And, it was my job more to set kind of where we're going. And then it was their job to figure out, well, how do we do that?
Right.
So like if I ever got into a place where I was asking, man, how do I do that? I'd be like, I got to get out of the way. Like that's your job.
Yeah. And that is something that's so hard for a lot of people. And I living in the white label world, it's hard for agency owners just to let go of, things when they outsource, but letting go of somebody who's going to take control of how this is going to roll out. I can imagine now sitting in the CEO seat, I get it. Like, I'm like, I wish I could say this, or I wish I could do this, or I don't know if I would do it that way, but you have to let them do it. I don't think there's any one right way. It's kind of like digital marketing, right? We all do SEO a little differently. Same idea here and same philosophy when you look at the way that the workflows can be executed and whatnot. So just stick to the stick to your lanes and all should be well.
Yeah. What what do you what do you suggest when there is conflict? You know, because there should always be conflict.
Right.
Like I had one of my old clients, they did a what's working in the mastermind about, you know, finding the CEO and working together. And he always said there should always be conflict because you guys are totally opposite. So
Yeah.
what do you guys do when there was conflict?
uh, well, back in the day, it was a lot different than it ended up being later on. We found when we had found EOS, the level 10 meetings became the most constructive way we would talk through points of conflict. Um, I would say that you want to stick with facts over feelings. Sometimes when the feelings get the better of you, you obviously can't have a productive conversation. And because both CEO and COO are very passionate in their roles, or they should be, and challenge is good. Challenge should be something you want. If your COO isn't challenging your ideas, you should find yourself somebody who will, in my opinion, because again, you shouldn't always be the smartest person in the room. And you want someone who's going to make you
Mhm.
think differently. And same on, on both sides. I think Michael and I really, again, complemented each other in these ways. Um, Level 10 is great because I think in those, and like you mentioned, a lot of people already use EOS. Those are great ways to facilitate conversations and just have it be about the subject. Where I usually found that it could go like astray would be if you're trying to have that dialogue through Slack, for example. Um, don't have those conversations through a chat. Don't have those conversations just one off on the fly. If you feel like it's going to be a bigger discussion and like you can, in your managing your own emotions, put it on like level 10 and go from there. That's how we ended up finding the healthiest way to have, I think, bigger conversations or points of conflict. And you will disagree on things. And so something that I took away from being a COO and when I got into this seat was that you have to let your COO have the opportunity to fail as well. So if you disagree, for example, with the way they'd like to execute something, give them a shot at making it happen. And if they fail, your job is to actually help pick them back up, not criticize them, not be like, oh, you can't do this job, anyway, or something like that. You really want to try and allow them to fail. Because otherwise they won't come to you with their ideas or with, trying to take on those bigger things.
Well, you can demotivate them, and that's the
Oh, yeah.
point. If you're like, I'm the CEO and it's my way or the highway, and you just demotivate every idea they have, then they're like, that's not why I'm here.
Right.
There's not where to grow. What do you see as the 3 or 4 most important roles for a COO, like an amazing COO, like to be like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like their job, like kind of like what they take care of. Yeah. So I think one of the most important areas is just their knowledge of how the business functions. Um, I think what made me a great COO was that I knew how every department, how all the tools, how everything we touched interacted with something else. I understood the experience as well from the client side. So those are really important areas of the business. Because your decisions will be based on how does it affect client experience? How does it affect the team? How efficient is it going to be? So you need to know those. A big part of my job though was in the financial side. Is this profitable? Like I looked at the P&L, are we spending too much money somewhere? What does one person cost versus another? How profitable does that make our clients? Like there's so many aspects in the financial side that I didn't know as the operations manager that once I knew them as a COO, my decision making actually became, okay, what is going to benefit the business and the client, not just the client? Because I think there's a big distinction there. With an operations manager per se, they really focus a lot on client experience. They're focused on making sure that it's a great outcome for the client, the team can execute it, but they don't necessarily think in terms of business logic. And is this actually financially a great decision for us? So those are going to be like, those are probably the main areas of focus when it comes to being a great COO. The other thing is to be a really great leader. And this is where I've seen it go very wrong in other businesses because I do interact with other COOs in my seat. And if you have somebody who doesn't care about the people, that is going to be a challenge because in this role, they look to us to lead them in the right direction. Just like the CEO is leading the whole business in the right direction. Your CEO isn't likely interacting, for example, with your account managers and getting them on board with a new idea. It's your COO. It's the person who's saying, all right, guys, this is where we're going to go. This is how we're going to make it happen. And if you have somebody with really poor leadership skills or just doesn't care about people, that will be a challenge. And I've seen it even with some of our partners bring on COOs that had terrible communication or just like had very toxic ways of communicating. And you just watch the clients fall off because suddenly the team just
Well,
stops.
their emotional intelligence is close to zero.
Yeah.
And they just look at things as like ones and zeros.
Yep.
And it's just like, no, you have to read people.
Yeah.
Big time. Right. And I also look at it like, I'll add something there too, between like a good operator and a bad operator. A bad operator is going to come in and create chaos and create a lot of other unnecessary systems and then blame other people. Because I've seen that.
Oh,
Versus like a good operator is going to come in and going, now we're using 4 systems. Like, how do we make that down to 2? And they're going to take away, I'm sure Michael got a lot of time back, and that's probably why he could drive you crazy too, right? Like he got a lot of time back because you were a good operator.
Yeah.
And that's the whole goal is like, when you get to a certain point, like the CEO needs to replace a lot of things that you're doing now because I'm a horrible operator. I'm a horrible manager. I won't manage anybody. I want them to manage them damn self. Like, right. And that's how I always hired. I hired the CEOs and the directors to manage themselves, but to manage other people.
Right. That's a smart move. Yeah. If you can identify it's funny that you say that because I find that that's almost one of the hardest things to be self-aware of is if you're a good manager, and it definitely takes time to learn that. But Michael was the same. He was like, I don't manage people. Brittany manages people. So kind of put me in between himself and the team. Then it was a great decision for him because he didn't want to do any of those things. And that's really where we were able to thrive. And I like to do those things. I like to help organize and keep everybody on track. So it's a fine balance though. You gotta, again, as a CEO, make sure you're not overstepping your COO or it just becomes an issue.
It's a challenge too, because as you build this business and you get, in the multi-million-dollar part, you think you can do everything.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, oh, I'm a fantastic manager. But like, no, like if you really look at it, like your team was really there for the team, not just you. And they kind of overlooked your inadequacies of being a bad manager.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of put someone in that place and they're like, oh, thank you. like it's almost like the Steve Jobs of like, yeah, you go work on this special project over here because your personality to people sucks.
Yeah. We all want to think that we're amazing at everything we do and touch. But yeah, I mean, some people just have different talents. And you look at your team's retention, right? Like look at how well are you retaining people? Maybe it's not that great. And that's a pretty sure bet that you're probably not in the right seat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Is there anything, Brittany, I did not ask you that you think would benefit the agency owners listening about, really kind of bringing on a COO and making sure that they're successful?
Yeah. I mean, I think the retention of your COO is really important. Finding them, looking for qualities that are going to complement yours is the best pointer I have there. Making sure that you have a platform that facilitates healthy conversation, like level 10s, really vital. But the other aspect of this is to ensure that your COO is taken care of. Michael did a really good job of this with me, which is obviously why I'm still here and why I'm the CEO now. But just remember, this is like, if you put everybody on an org chart and you look at all the roles in your agency, the COO is going to hold pretty much the most amount of stress, right? They're relieving your stress because you don't have to do a lot of these things. They are now taking that on and finding ways to make sure that they feel supported, they're successful, they have all the tools that they need to execute efficiently at their job. Checking in with them, seeing if they're overloaded. Those are all things I would suggest, because COOs aren't just unicorns. They're not always going to be feeling their best and doing their best and doing all these things. You really have to make sure they're taken care of. And because, again, it'll be the most vital role in getting you out of the day-to-day and out of the weeds, you want to make sure you have something in place to retain them. So if you look at, for example, profit sharing or any other bonuses or anything like that that feel very special and unique to that role, if they achieve the goals that you guys set out to do, those are things that can really help secure that person for the long haul. I know that I talk to people and they're like, gosh, it's so expensive. But you have to look at it like it's an investment. This is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. You're going to be building a relationship with somebody. This isn't just transactional. So, you'll probably go through, I'd say, a few personalities before you find the one that really matches you well. But once you do, you want to make sure you find a way to retain them.
Yeah. And I when I found these types of people, I always felt like I was working for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how we should all feel, right? We work
I was like, man, I gotta what can I do to take off some of your plate? And it was kind of the reverse, which I thought was kind of humorous to me. And then I'm like, well, no, it should actually be that way, right? Like now I have, 3 or 4 people that I need to just absolutely, how can I better them? How can I coach and mentor them in order for them to be successful?
Right.
And they were kind of managing me like, all right, you need to be here at this time and you need to do that. Okay, cool. I got it.
That's a really good point. Actually, you need somebody who's going to keep you in line. I remember we did our first EOS training and our coach had said, my job was to keep Michael in line. Like if he brings up an idea and it is not on your rocks, right? Like you need to make sure that it goes where it goes. And it's, you have to make sure someone's not afraid to challenge you. So putting someone who's passive in that role isn't going to benefit you.
No.
You really do want to put somebody who's comfortable saying, no, or like, you need to go back here. I'm going to do this here. So again, it goes back to that kind of relationship dynamic.
Yeah.
You have to be comfortable with those discussions with each other.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on this show and sharing with us. I know a lot of people listening will be like, oh, okay, I did that wrong and I need to go do that right. And it's all about, just remember, it's going to take a while to figure this all out. You're not going to hit the home run right off the bat. If you do, congrats, but it doesn't happen very much. But thanks so much, Brittany, for coming on the show. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it out with your co-founder, another agency. You'll help them out. You'll help us out. And until next time, have a swank day. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want more content like this, make sure you click on the link on the screen or check out your most popular podcast platform where the full episode is there. And until next time, have a swank day. What are you doing? Go check it out. Click on the link. I'll see you soon.